My name is Michael Mulcahy. I'm one of the founding partners of MBN Brands, and we are a kind of business growth firm focused on building best-in-class portfolio companies. The most significant of which has been our founding portfolio company, which is Front Range Holdings, and that's a QSR portfolio company working across several brands: Burger King, Jimmy John's, KFC, and Great American Cookie, and our Jimmy John's business, which is 55 locations across 6 states. We've been a customer with Vivant for about 5 years. First, with a small number of stores, and then very quickly moving to doing an enterprise level contract to cover all of our locations.
Amazing. So I'm curious, before Vivant, what did a typical week look like for you guys when internet connectivity, those things just went down?
Well, I think in the QSR business, internet was something that was never seen as or at least 5 years ago, wasn't seen as the critical resource it is today, from the proliferation of channel expansion, right? Third party, online ordering, et cetera, right? As well as the fact as just like payment processing, the kind of upticking of credit cards as a form of payments, right? And so when you think about the store catching up to that, right, the phone became obsolete, and all of a sudden internet became literally what allowed us to run our business operationally, as we thought about our inventory systems that became cloud based, and more importantly with our customers. And in Jimmy John's specifically, our hours in which we are most profitable and effective are limited. We're a lunchtime business, right? And so the nightmare scenario is getting the call of, I have no internet, right? And for two reasons. One, obviously, it literally stops most of our important commerce channels, but more importantly, we now have presented a problem to a store leader that they're going to have trouble fixing, right? All of a sudden, everyone that's shown up to work that day, everyone that's shown up to do what we've asked them to do, can't do that because of a problem not of their own making, right? And so for us, it truly is like that scenario where you're rushing around, you're trying to fix it, but candidly, you can run against a wall to do it, but the ability to solve it in time to quote unquote save the day was very limited, and so it was challenging. And then, exacerbated by mismatch of legacy providers, right? Different systems, different hardware, no customer service to speak of, right? And so we were left with very limited options in how to fix something in time to not have it have an outsized impact on our month, on our performance.
Yeah, that's actually critical because you're right. You put a manager in a situation
if
where,
they if they don't bake bread, right?
yeah,
If they don't prep the projections right, that's something we can come to them, coach them up about it, ask them about it, figure out how we can do better with them. If the internet fails, that's us. That's the owners, that's management. We have an implicit contract, right? You guys run the best operation and customer service you can within the four walls. Accuracy, speed, hospitality. We will make sure you have the tools to do so. And so when internet breaks down, we have broken our part of that contract with our team, right? And it's incredibly unfortunate because I don't believe in the fact that managers like being slow. There is nothing worse than being at a job where you're sitting on your hands. Minutes feel like hours, right? It's not a place you want to be. Jimmy John's restaurants are fun when they're busy, right? Yeah, you don't want to be too busy, but you want that flow of activity. It's athletic almost, right? And you do something. And besides the fact, right, like in our business, nothing cuts off cleanly, right? So when we lost internet an hour into lunch, right, there were people that put in orders we may not have received, right? People whose orders then are coming through, things we couldn't change, right? There are other pieces of connective tissue from the third party to our own platforms that may not automatically realize we cannot receive that data, right? And that's when the problems start to compound, right? So for us, it's like with our managers, that piece of it became such a critical need, right? It's one of those things that we call a non-negotiable, right? We have to be able for our stores to service our customers with the technology and resources that they need to do so.
absolutely. So business impact, let's talk through that. Obviously, the
Yeah.
management employees, a can of worms,
Yeah.
a nightmare there. And I'm sure obviously revenue impact was
Yeah.
another one, and efficiency, labor percentages. I
Absolutely.
was talking to another Jimmy John's, and it's like we spend 500-600 bucks an hour.
Yeah.
So now labor is being spent, but
Yeah.
revenue is not coming in.
Yeah. And like,
What
I
was that
think
for
for
you
us,
guys?
I think when we think about business operations, like, yes, there is the implied, labor dollars per sales, per sales dollar, et cetera, labor hours per sales, that methodology you can put into it. But when we think about the lost day, hour, et cetera, we think about it from a transactional perspective for customer experience. In the competitive set that we sit in the, fast, casual category, whatever you want to put us in, right? We don't like to put ourselves in boxes, right? But it's someone's made the choice to choose Jimmy John's today, right? And then it doesn't work, right? And our ability to win that customer back is severely limited, right? We're not a single proprietor. We don't own our data end to end, right? Our customer data, depending how they come in, right? And so they're negatively impacted. So yeah, sales per labor hour, things like that, that's tough. I think spoilage for Jimmy John's is also a big one, right? When we lose 2 hours of lunch that we were not prepared for, we've sliced produce, we've sliced meat, we've baked bread, right? So, I mean, like, the transactional costs make a day in which, like, on a Tuesday, a slower day, right? You could be looking to maybe break even during lunch. And, you're going to build your positive days more than your negative days, right? But what we've lost is that customer who may have eaten us once and then becomes a 3-time visitor, right? The guy that's the woman or man who signs up for loyalty when they come in, right? We know, unlike traditional brick and mortar, real dining restaurants, our ability to win back and interact with our customers is so limited that when we have even that's out of our control, right? Like ultimately, as the operator, I didn't do anything to make my internet tap out, to fail, right? It's very 99% of the time, it's not something of my own making, right? Yet, I don't think a customer cares about that, right? I am the face of the problem. And that's, I think, going back to that manager point, right? So the financial impact for us, we always thought about as, the loss of customer experience on that day having that long-term impact. Weather, things like that are always going to kind of, punch you in the gut sometimes. And, forecasting makes sense until something happens you didn't expect, right? But it's that customer piece of it again, because it's like, it was made difficult. And I think that goes across the board because it's not just about that lack of business from when it happens going forward. It's also what happens to the rest of the day. The batching of our credit card data. If that gets delayed, all of a sudden someone's card isn't charged until 72 hours after the sandwich ring. That's weird, right? People protect their accounts. Is that something, you have chargeback issues you have? And so like, and the long tail piece of fixing that, right, is always going to be juxtaposed to the fact of now we have to have 3 really good days after this week because we lost a day, right? We're trying to make 7 days of sales now in 6.
Yeah. Wow. So obviously revenue loss, employee dissatisfaction, customer dissatisfaction, the loyalty's down, that's not working. And the whole operation completely breaks down. So I'm curious, what did you guys try before you came to Vivant? Did you try anything else?
I mean, so I think we were looking at different ways. I mean, I will say that when we learned about Vivant's, what I considered, and I mean like kind of the proprietary stack there, right, of the always on, the backup, the kind of, the guaranteed, right? That's not a term you may like me to use in your marketing materials, but to the best.
No, we do it. Like
exactly.
Right
so that piece right there, right? When I think we looked at it, right, it was like, okay, hey, like we were looking at it as like, is there we call it scrappy, not crappy, right? Like we weren't going to set up a secondary system, right? So what could we do, right? Could we use old credit card chargers, right? Like the answer was like, no one wants to see that machine come out when they come to get a Jimmy John's order, right? Like, could we do things to capture in the moment? But like, candidly, unfortunately, especially as a larger company, right? Like it's also time to issue identification in that a GM's not going to know. I mean, yes, we put the training in place, but know exactly who to call, right? Because they may call their district manager. The district manager's not sitting at their desk at noon, right? At 12:30, they're doing something else, right? This is high tide for us, right? And so we tried things like having our own kind of like Wi-Fi signals there that maybe the employees could just even use to have a backup signal, right? By candidly like stuff like making signs saying we apologize, but our internet is down, right? Like trying to give the customer, at least before they open the door, this understanding that their experience may be negatively impacted. And I think most importantly, which was the most impossible task, is like, we tried to somehow develop relationships with our providers, because that actually is the biggest problem, right? When you call a small or large internet provider company, right? Like you are forced to spend so much time validating your problem that the time in which you have to solve it is almost it's insignificant to the entire time of resolution, right? You spend more time convincing them you have a problem, right? Like we've all been through that. Have you reset your modem? Of course I have. Like, what do you think? I haven't tried to fix this, you know? And so like that piece of it, right, became like the hardest part of like, we would try our best to figure out any way to circumvent being someone in line, right? Even as a business customer, right? Like we'd be like, what is your name? Can I have your phone number, right? Something where we'd have a connection point. And, you know, I think for us, that was a probably beyond the technology guarantee, the partnership guarantee with Vivant for me is what I think was truly a competitive differentiator. I mean, that was great, but what we really appreciated was we felt and still feel to this day that we have a partnership with the team, right? Good, bad, or otherwise, we know that we can help solve these issues and we're not going to be kind of like placed in some queue unnecessarily, right? Hey, things are complex. It's hard. This is a complicated business you guys work in, but we know we have folks on our side that are actually care about solving our problem.
Yeah, and actually you nailed it because I tell every single one of my staff, I tell them the same thing. I'm like, hey, we just onboarded another 55 locations that we bought.
Yeah.
We own the restaurants.
Yeah.
Your job is to ensure that that restaurant stays online so we remain profitable.
I mean, if you want to talk about the insane like bizarreness of the change, and this is a compliment to you, but it's humorous to me, right? Is because like I find it funny that sometimes now when I find out if there is an issue, and to be clear, right, the backup has kicked in. So our operations aren't affected, but still, you nor I want to be relying on our backup solution, right? We want primary to be the focus, right? That's where we're going to get the best performance. But I find it comical sometimes that it is a reverse. The Vivant team is trying desperately to get in touch with us to fix the option, you know, like, and so that's a beautiful thing. But I think like that's unique, right? That's unique. It's that like, you know, you have a provider that actually is, you know, is interested in not only helping your business do the minimum viable product, what we've agreed to, but making sure that we perform the best, right? Because we know that backup is exactly that. It's not something we should rely on, right? If there's a problem, we need to fix it, right? Like candidly, I found our team sometimes apologizing to the Vivant team because they're like, my bad, like we didn't do that reset, you know, like when you guys have given us the playbook, but like, man, as a business owner, what a great problem to have, right? Like not great for you. I know you're like, yeah, I want to talk to you about that. But like, I think for us, what a shift, right? To actually be on the kind of receiving side of proactive behavior versus like on the pushing side of reactive behavior.
Absolutely. And again, that's our differentiators. We're so proactive. And funny enough, in the last year, like we continue to grow with our customers. Like Jimmy John's is one of our biggest customers still to date by number of locations. That helped us do a lot of things where we took from other industries, like color coding cables, so that when we call, we're like, hey, we need to find this modem. It's like, well, there's like 1,000 blue cables. It's like, forget that. Just look for the single red one. Or look for the yellow one, or look for these. So that made it easier. Absolutely. And then Dave's Hot Chicken came in, brought in a new standards. So now, with the new upgraded system, we don't even call the manager to reboot anything. We just reboot from our side. Like,
which is amazing. And I think like
manager.
The one piece though that probably, if I want to make sure that we don't overlook, right, is, you know, what is like consumer or business otherwise. What I think one of the hardest parts of your job is any customer that's not a customer, you have to overcome the stickiness factor, which is I have this thing in my store that mostly works and changing it makes me nervous because I go from something to something new. And yeah, you told me it's better. But one of the most impactful parts of the foundation of our relationship with Vivant still to this day is their ability to help us the things that with matters that are not exactly in their direct remit. And for that, I mean, right, we went from probably 12 different providers to working with Vivant as a kind of enterprise level partnership. And there's a world where part of our hesitation in making that change was like, this is going to be a nightmare, you know, like this process of change, and we're going to forget to put their equipment in the night before. The coordination and support we got from the Vivant team in that process, I mean, that to me was the foundation of like, we were able to sit back at ourselves and say, hey, there's always going to be complexities, but like, if you want justification that you found someone that cares about your business, right? Like the things they do that are not directly related to their core task to help you, that's when And I think like that piece from coming in and cleaning up, helping us clean up our own weird Frankenstein setup of wires and cables and machines. And you're like, you don't need this one. You don't need like that consultative approach, right? That partnership approach, again, is unlike anything I think you'd see from a traditional provider.
That's amazing. Like, I'm glad that the vision that I've set up.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say like it would make me pumped up to hear that too, because like that's the point, right? Like you understand, and I think you see that in the team's DNA that they get it, right? Like yes, we have to hit the technological remit of our business, but like at the end of the day, with all the technology, we're still people, right? We need help. We want to feel like people, and like you. I believe the Vivant team, given some of the great people you've brought in on your team with different experience, right? Another thing I think that's been awesome is like when you're talking to folks on your team doing different things, talking about PCI, talking about different products, right? Like they've become experts with you in that field, but they also may have had a career where they were an operator. And so they speak operator, right? They get the understanding of like, you know what? Like don't ask a guy who runs a Jimmy John's to have a conference call at noon, right? Like it's going to have to be a different time, but like that sort of stuff that's implied. And I think in some cases, right? Like the traditional methods there sometimes are almost disrespectful to people in our business because it's like, calling us in the middle of the day every day is just, it's insulting, right? Like, why would you think this is when we think about our business, right? And so I think that's again where I would call it entrepreneurial spirit of the business comes through and like understanding actually what your customers are doing and where you can fit in to be a good partner.
100%. So that leads me to a follow-up question. You obviously there's a lot of complexity involved. You're right. We try to do everything that we can to make it easier. And that is one of the pain points where someone is looking at this and it's like, oh man, like I've got to go through that shift. So you were at that stage. But why did you decide to give Vivant a shot and actually go through the transition?
So, I don't know if this was like by design, maybe it was serendipitous, right? But the original reason that when we were kind of introduced to Vivant and started figuring out like, and again, I'm a pilot person, right? You're always going to test something before you do it. And I think that's really important for both sides. I always say to anyone about a pilot, like you should learn as much about me as I learn about you. Because I don't know that you want to take on the hassle, right? If I can't hold up my end of the bargain. But what was interesting was where Vivant first helped us was when we were almost out of options, right? Like we had not been able to find any provider or partner who could give us an actionable solution to our technology needs in kind of, let's call it like secondary locations. Hey, if I have a store in downtown Denver, the reality is like the wiring is going to be there, the technology is going to be there, right? Like it makes it easier on you, it makes it easier on me, the infrastructure is there, right? When I have one in Mountain Town, Colorado, it may not be there. And like you think about Jimmy John's, right? Those are single point retail stores. A lot of them aren't outfitted with what I'd call like enterprise level, back of building, right? From a cabling perspective, from a technology perspective. And so like we kind of, in a sense of like, and you guys were hungry, which I love, right? You like, what is your problem? We're like, this is a problem. Like if you want to solve, you want to show us, you understand how to solve problems, this is a problem. And like we were frustrated, right? Because the internet's out, the internet's on, the internet's out, the internet's on. The internet's out for half the month and the bill is twice as high. And you're like, and again, at 55 locations, like it's insane to think that we have the ability to like make sure we're tying out everything in real time, right? We're going back 4 weeks later when we look at that bill and it was just unruly. When we gave that challenge, I'm going to call it, to Vivant, and it was like, not only did they solve the problem, but they went above and beyond, right? I mean, from a site survey standpoint, like talking to us about some of the issues, like literally within the building and how they would solve that, right? From where our equipment is placed, right? Even in some cases being like, you guys are running some really old other pieces of technology here. When you look at your piece of that, you may want to decide, right? Not tis, we can't do this, but you asked us to solve this problem. We're looking from it from end to end. And so then as we thought about that, right, it honestly was one of these things where candidly, selfishly, maybe we were like, well, we can take advantage of this because like these folks really want to like understand our setup. So yeah, site surveys, right? Like that's a term that I think people don't understand the difference between someone like giving you lip service, creating an address spreadsheet that's like, oh, we've looked, and like actually going through and understanding, here's what we can do, here's where you are today, right? And then even like from the kind of like transition piece of it, like partnering with us, right? Like I will always remember, in part of the process there as we were trying to get some PCI stuff done, right? Like legitimately the Vivant team, like setting up time with me because I had to hit the keystroke and I was so bad at it, right? But they're like, listen, it's okay. We'll do a 10-minute call every day for 2 weeks so we get through all these pieces of compliance and we're good to go, right? Like that piece of it was started small. You know, it was kind of like, why are we not leaning into this? Like this is a partner that understands what we're trying to accomplish, and like we should be seeking folks like that to expand our relationship, right, as much as possible. And so it became a no-brainer.
Absolutely. And we tell our entire customer base, we're like, listen, the moment you sign that agreement, now you have a team of 100 experts
Yeah.
that are there. They're your team members. They're employees that you don't have to hire,
Yeah.
you don't have to train, you don't have to pay for. It's included as your service. Take advantage of that. So
Yeah, no,
definitely
like
we want
I hope you're
everybody to
respectful in
lean
that, but
into
we fully see that, right? Like, you know, I think for us, it's we have central support teams for our restaurants, right? Facilities management, et cetera, right? Like this would fall within that, and our team knows. In many cases, it's we got to get in the database, we got to look it up. Oh gosh, it's an 800 number, right? It's like, but no, it's Vivant. Like, if anything, what's been awesome is that actually has percolated into our ops team and they feel confident and you guys are welcoming, right? It's not like what was my mother's maiden name because I set up the account, right? You know, it's like you're able to verify because you're there, you know what you're seeing, and you're solution oriented, not simply process oriented.
100%. And I think more specifically, we're outcome oriented. I think
Absolutely.
the goal is
Yeah.
that location cannot lose $1 of revenue because internet's out or phones are out or firewall has gone down or whatever the problem is. Who cares what the problem is? The outcome is get it online as quickly as possible because these are non-recoverable events. When that time passes, that labor is not going to go back down. The customer is not going to be happy because of like there's no way to mend that situation, etc. So we understand that urgency.
Yeah, and I think you said that's one thing I'd want to think about though, and just a point that occurred to me that I think is worth mentioning, right, is I can probably count on one hand the other partners I have that I would consider enterprise that aren't almost mandated by the franchisor. And the reason I want to make that distinction is sometimes when that partnership happens, right, the franchisor has effectively backfilled the outsourced provider's limitations, right? They've put people on their side to help us because we have to use this, right? In this case here, right, to have a solution going across our business on something so critical that still was candidly independent in nature, like you don't answer to a to a higher power, right? Like you're not at the risk of a system, like you're an independent relationship with us, right? Yet it has this support as if like you guys were a owned Jimmy John's provider. And to your point, you work with a lot of brands, but that's different when you think about that independently, right? When there's not something like, again, some of these folks that have these system level contracts, they're great and they know they got to perform and do the minimum because it's the network, right? I think the way you guys have built out with Jimmy John's, the only reason that's happened is because the way you've understood the business's need. It's not because there was a mandate or some preferential piece to it, you know, and that's different, I think, than a lot of those other larger scale partnerships in our industry.
100%. So I've taken a liberty of speaking to a few other Jimmy John's owners as well. So one of them came and said, listen, I know what I'm telling you is too good to be true. Right. And at some point, you're going to find yourself asking, this is too good to be true. This partner like this can't exist until you try it. Right. Then you're going to tell the next guy, listen, I understand it's too good to be true, but you won't know until you give it a shot. Yeah. So I'm curious, it sounds like maybe you share that experience. And if somebody's on the fence and they're like, this is too good to be true, what would you tell them?
And so I would say to you, like, what do you have to lose in making, and like that to me is like the hard part about your business, your industry, right? Is the perception is it all is terrible. It's all problematic. It's a 4-letter word in my day, every day, right? And what I would say is like, to the true person who's skeptical, right? Like, it's like, what do you have to lose? You're admitting you're not satisfied, right? So at a minimum, right, you're going to figure out whether it's something that's solvable, but more importantly, I mean, we do mergers and we divest and we acquire, right? So we have divested Jimmy John's, right? And like, I think when we go through vendors, right, or partners, right, like that's one where I can pick on a shorthand, ones where I'm like, it is worth you talking to these folks. Like, don't think about like, you may work with X in your business, but if you haven't, and I think the nice thing is in the more recent opportunities and transactions we've pursued, Vivant is a known quantity, right? It's a known entity. It makes it easier. But what I say to them is like, you have nothing to lose in trying to change, but like, think about what you have to gain, right? Like, you can be a skeptic to the value proposition of no drop in internet, no loss of connectivity in the customer service. You can say like, heard that before, never experienced it. Okay. Like I have found that when we were even talking about the rollout here and some kind of like checkpoints of our partnership, you guys were very upfront that like, hey, if you truly believe this isn't working, then we will do our best to solve it. But if we can't solve it, like, then okay, it didn't work, right? And I think that's also something, it's almost like that's the most real form of confidence is like, yeah, okay, like you're nervous, fine, be nervous because we have no hesitation that we're not going to meet and exceed your needs. And so it's just that piece of it. But I think, and I also just tell them that you guys solve that friction point on the transition because that's the other piece of it, right? When any other service, and you think about some of these core services, banking, or if you're ever trying to do like, a utility provider change, things like that. The scary piece is like you disconnect the system and the system can't get back on, right? Absolutely. And I think in that case, that really to me has been like the piece that showed the relationship was going to be one that was successful because in no circumstances was there ever this like, hey guys, like we can't figure it out. Like, you understood the urgency, right? I mean, it was military in focus, right? When we were going through our changing to make sure that like it was done and updated, validated and tested so that our store noticed no difference other than not losing connectivity in upcoming shifts.
100%. Agreed. So we've talked a lot about the pain points, the problems, and the kind of the process. I'm curious what your day-to-day looks like now with no outages, no problems that impacts any of those problems.
I think for us, as we scale as a company, right, like it's what we consider to be like that foundation to our business that allows us to pursue the things that we got into doing in the first place, right? It's like, when you have to focus on resolving solvable problems day in and day out, there's a lot of headwinds you're going to face in building a better business, right? And when we call it the removal of hassle, when there's one less hassle to deal with each day, the hours that opens up to focus on growing sales, improving operations, right? Like you build bandwidth vertically in your organization, right? The GM has more time to do each of their daily tasks because they're not having to solve this issue. The field ops support team, the corporate team, our financial team, right? Like that's another piece of it, right? Think about like for us, the beauty of having a single integrated bill that we actually can review and ask questions proactively and have absolute access to, right? Like that piece of time. Like time is the resource that we most undervalue because that is never what we're going to have enough and we can't solve that, right? Even when we bring in more people, we're not increasing the hours per day. We're just increasing the people against those hours, right? For the most part. And now with that out of the control, yeah, there'll be other problems, but if we can open up 3% more time to think about revenue growth, right? Strategic outreach in Jimmy John's, catering, loyalty attachment, real business priorities, right? That's at the end of the year where you can say like, you know what, like of all the things we attribute our same store sales growth, that's a part of it, right? More time focused on our business objectives because we're not dealing with what I call like non-critical issues. Losing internet is critical, but having internet doesn't help me build a better business. It's a mandatory to run my business. And I want to spend as much time as I can building a better business, right? Focusing on that.
Absolutely. And then in terms of support, I know you touched base a little bit on it, but how does it feel to have a single point of contact? And have you guys interacted with support? And what is your experience with our support team?
And it's a game changer because it's so unlike, the hardest piece is building the muscle memory in our team that like you can reach out to these folks and they will call you back. Everyone in their personal lives as it comes to like, internet and connectivity. In your personal life, you may have a bad experience. Like you bring this baggage of it's not worth reaching out because no one's going to get back to you and it's not going to matter, right? Like as we've trained our team to that, right? I think that has been the hardest part. I've been like, no, just email them. Just call them. Someone picks up the phone. Someone gets back to you. As I mentioned earlier, right? Like at this point, maybe this is your guys' strategy. You beat us to problem identification, right? And are asking us like how to solve it, right? Like what I would say with my team, what I stress is we need to be as thoughtful about the information you have on us as we have on you, because we have every understanding of how to pursue problem resolution. But when we change emails, when we do whatever, right? Like that's all we break the chain on our side, right? But I think for us, again, it's almost one of those things that you take for granted in a good way, because it's not something I have to keep like worrying about as a single point of contact in my business. Like I have that person I know who can solve the issue. Like it's rare. I can't remember truthfully the last time I've discussed a technology, connectivity, business impact in a financial review, right? We had unreliable internet on Saturday and Sunday, so sales were down. Like that has not appeared in our financial meetings in years, right? And that's kind of knowing that like you have a good system in place.
Absolutely, and that's the goal. Like we don't want that to show
Yeah.
up in a financial report, which is lagging,
Yeah.
and there's nothing you could do. You could look at it and say, okay, like what am I gonna do now? Time has passed. Nothing that
Absolutely.
you could do to make a change.
Yeah. No, I think you're
Now,
hitting the nail on the head. Yeah.
obviously, like there's a lot of other pieces to that. You mentioned like a single accountable vendor, no finger pointing, so the POS company is not blaming the internet company is blaming the wiring, and the wiring company is blaming
Right.
back the POS company. So
Well, I would say
I'm
though,
assuming all
that's
those
where the
have gone away.
chain breaks a little bit, is that the POS vendor, right, could still be like, oh, you got to go talk to this person, right? But I think what we found, given your experience within Jimmy John's, our system, right, is that actually you have a knowledge base sometimes that can help us solve a problem that wasn't yours, but you're able to like, we benefit from the knowledge base you guys have built on Jimmy John's operations, right? Like we may have an issue that the POS vendor tells us and you're like, it's not our issue, but we've dealt with this. And so here's what you have to do, right? And I think like that again is really cool because it's someone who is a solutions provider, right? Not a, here's my box and I'll fix everything in my box. It's, you guys understand at the end of the day, if we have a problem that's hurting our business, like it's in your best interest to help us. And I think that's inherent in your company's DNA, right? But that's where it is even a little different of, that Spider-Man meme, everyone pointing at each other, right? Like when we get to having to work with our Vivant partners, it's not that case, right? It's a much more collaborative approach. There's an investigation approach. If you guys can help us solve it, even if it's not directly related to your core responsibilities as our partner, you'll do so. And I think that's really cool.
100%. Yeah, I've actually personally been on several calls where it's like, no, trust me, it's this part.
Yeah, and you guys have seen
Get
it, which
that
is
replaced.
awesome. Because like, again, like that knowledge base, yeah, maybe it's codified in some book, but that's also a testament to like the way that your teams work together. We may not talk to the exact same individual, but whoever we talk to on the team, their understanding and their way to kind of like have that level set of like, gotcha, like let's get into solving your problem, right? Again, it's not the 20 minutes of like, and you work where? And what, and you're like sitting there being like, I could have solved my problem if you just let me get to it, and that's, again, very unlike your traditional experiences in the category.
100%. Yeah, and that's the beauty of this. We understand that industry so well.
Yeah.
And I've been on three-way calls, and I know my support team has been with POS, with the customer at location. It's like, look, trust me, this is the problem. Just let's replace this, let's rewire this, and things will be back online. And we solve the problem, even though it may not be related to any of our systems. But yeah, you're right. At the end of the day, we believe that if our customers fail, we by default will fail. Like if you don't have the sales to pay for your bills, then obviously we're gonna fail as well. So it's our mutual interest is the same. That location must be profitable, and when a customer is willing to come in and spend money, order online, come pick up their food, and give money to that location, it's our responsibility to ensure that you're able to take that money and they don't go to a competitor.
1,000%, right? And we understand that when we miss that opportunity with a core customer or a new customer, there is no guarantee we'll get another chance, right? So we think about everything as critical, right? Every sale, even in a high transaction business.
So Since switching,
Yeah.
if you can give me a little bit more measurable results, like I'm talk more through the sales, the labor,
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
inventory, or the food waste.
I
Give
mean,
me a little bit more insight on improvements that you've seen actually on the financials.
yes, I mean, what I would say first and foremost, right, is like what we try to do in determining business success in some cases is remove variables, right? So when we want to look at our cost of goods, when we want to look at everything as a sales-based metric, what we need to do is make sure that we're agreeing to sales numbers that are consistent, right? And so sales numbers that are consistent are based on consistent operating hours, right? And so I think as we have seen the ability to remove blips in operations that then say, okay, well, labor is now 3 points higher, not because we ran 300 basis points more labor, but because we had to apply labor to non-sales hours, right? We've seen the consistency. Now, what that does over time, though, is it trends down, right? Our labor being able to be, 50 basis points lower in a different quarter, right? Our labor being able to forecast appropriately because as you went through a year of cycle time, right, you normalized your own sales data. We're really big, especially more than ever today, right? We have data overload, but the data we need to be focused on in our business is our own, not even the franchisor's best practices and what the DMA does, not whatever. What did this store do specifically? What were the events that drove it to outperform, underperform, or perform at expectation? Right? And I think then when you eliminate variables, like you don't have to talk about interruptions. Okay, so now I can focus on weather within the given month. I can focus on promotional activity, right? So I think we have seen that. And overall, I think that has helped us increase the AUV of our portfolio, right? We've taken stores that had sales challenges in some cases and been able to increase sales 3, 5, 6% year over year, which is meaningful in our business, right? Because we're consistent. And like I think the consistency piece of it is like our implicit promise is fresh food fast, hospitality, accuracy, right, for our customers, the way you want it, when you want it, the way that it's made. And you can't do that when you have operational challenges around technology. I think another piece, though, talking about Jimmy John's specific metric, right? One of the pieces that, again, with consistency is our out the door time, right? Out the door time is critical in Jimmy John's, right? We want to get our food to our customers quickly, right? Quickly and correctly. And we have seen a over 25% reduction, right? Roughly in out the door time over the past, 2 years, more so probably, right? Like getting to be like what we consider to be best in class. And again, that's because like everything from our systems is stable, is consistent. The GM has, we run, as you can imagine, as a multi-state operator, we don't have as much MBWA, right? Management by walking around as we'd like. We have local market reps, we have field presentation, but our system exists in a cloud-based, technology-based platform, right? From labor reporting to sales forecasting to inventory checking to management performance reviews, right? And all of that not being a hassle for the GM trickles up and trickles down to running a better business. But I think in some of those metrics, getting out the door faster, right? Consistency in our metrics, right? Like for us, improvement, we always give a ton of credit to the people in the team that do it, right? If you run great labor, there's a piece to be played in the training you were given, but you executed it, right? So, however, what we've done in this case, right, is made sure the tools are there for them to execute as we've asked them to. And so they can benefit in that upside, right? Whether that's from hitting their bonuses, whether that's from, all the opportunity that has from running a great store. But I think in some cases, the performance gains we've seen in sales, the consistency in labor, which ultimately meant a reduction in labor, right? Less up and down, this, on the variable side, right? Has been a testament to just a business that has one less critical variable to have to be unsure about.
Of course. And yeah, I say it's the ownership's responsibility to provide the right tools
Yeah.
to your employees if you want them to hit their numbers and metrics.
Absolutely. And like you think about the way that technology is now really integrating through operations, I think we are a technology first company. That's been one of the things why we got in here is we believe we're still scratching the surface of all the things we can do at our stores. But even as the franchisor catches up, right? Checklists are on iPads, things like that, like latency issues, connectivity issues, et cetera, right? Like those little pieces are what makes you not complete your survey twice and then you get a failure from an operations standpoint from the franchisor, right? That has consequences that affect your business, and we don't have to worry about that, right? So it's one less thing that we have to be concerned about, and we can focus on doing what you have to do so you have time to do what we want you to do.
Absolutely. And I'm super bullish in the restaurants for this exact same reason.
Yeah.
I think you're just barely, everybody's scratching the surface of the restaurant industry. And I think the new wave, I've said this before, at the end of the decade, there'll be a handful of multi-billionaires that will be made in the restaurant space. And they have figured out that it has to be technology first who happens to be selling food.
Yeah, and like
And
I think it's important. I fully agree with you, but the one piece there that we make sure that we point out to our team is we like technology enablement to build better stores, not to reduce costs, right? So I think in some cases the aversion to technology is because it's seen as, oh, I want to replace someone in the store. No, actually, I want to grow sales enough to put an extra body in the store to serve our customers, right? That's what I think that piece of it is so critical. And I know that you guys get that because you're in the space, but I think sometimes there's this false fallacy of, oh, technology means reduction of human. No, it means empowering our human team members, our human capital, right? It means we are always going to be a people business. The vending machine age is not going to be how you receive a sandwich, right? But the way our customer service folks can do that and be better at that is through technology and enablement of new technologies.
yeah, and I totally agree with you. You
Yeah.
can't cost yourself out of business. You can't keep
Yeah.
cutting costs down until you go out of business. There's unlimited sales growth. Like even in a Jimmy John's that may not be able to handle more than a couple
Yeah.
$1,000,000 in a store, you could build catering orders outside.
Right.
You could do business events.
Or I
and
mean,
you could do
or you
all sorts
develop
of
a
different
market
ways.
opportunity to build a second store, right? Like
Or a
because
second
of
store.
demand, right? I mean, like again, in franchising, the tide rises all boats. So if we all run A+ stores, we're all going to do really well, right? If we all invest in, and I think like catering, right? Like that's the frontier, right? That I think we have the most, that Jimmy John's is so unique in that fact of the ability to do that. Like it's one of the things I'm most excited about. And by having these things like less interruption, no operational issues related to technology and connectivity, I can ask my GM, how would you build this business, right? And know that I'm not adding something to their plate. I'm giving them an opportunity, right? I'm not pushing it into an already, they're busy, right? We know that. But when we can give them a chance, because inherently I believe the folks that are the most successful are the folks that when given that opportunity, grab it and run with it, and that's what we love to see. Yeah.
Yeah, 1,000%. And I think that's what makes you guys unique is you're not focused on cost savings, you're focused on revenue growth. How do I and you increase revenue, that solves all sorts of problems.
It's the
Labor
tide rises
percentage
all boats, right? Like labor's not an issue at a $4 million store, right? Like that's what I always say.
Never.
That's your inventory being full, like doesn't matter if you have stuff flying out the doors, right? What is critical is that we do everything we can to support locations that we think are capable of more. And the reason we do that, right, is by helping that GM focus on building that business, not solving the problems or only controlling costs within the walls.
1,000%. Yeah, I had this conversation a couple of weeks ago, and it's like the three challenges in a restaurant: food cost is too high, labor cost is too high, profits are thin.
Right.
But show me a $4 million restaurant that has those three problems. None do, because
No,
the revenue
absolutely.
just fixes all those problems.
Yeah, well, we always love, there's nothing better than we hear than our stores have been given additional labor because we want to make sure we're not missing sales opportunities, right? Like that's when I feel the system is working, the value proposition is working.
1,000%.
Yeah.
So to close off, if there was another business owner in the same situation, they're maybe on the fence about switching to Vivant or considering our services, similar number of locations, they're dealing with the similar challenges, what would you advise them to do?
What I would advise them to do is sit down with the Vivant team in earnest and give them the chance to learn about their business and their problems. Because I think that as customers, we become very guarded in opening our kimono to our issues. Our issues could be cost, our issues could be connectivity, our issues could be customer service, right? And there's a fear that when you do that, as we're all kind of cynical in nature, right, that person may pounce on that opportunity, right? Or there's going to be this idea of you have to win because I lose, right? I don't think you're going to find that, and I didn't find that in my experience working with Vivant. What I did is I found a company that was approaching this sector with a much different lens, and that may be the piece of inertia you have to get over the most is just try to leave your previous experience at the door and approach this as you would an opportunity to reset a critical foundational part of your business, And at the end of the day, I think the one piece where Vivant really truly stands out is that they are shared success oriented. So if you think it's not working and truly, and like again, I'm not looking at the T's and C's, right? But if truly we came to you and said, you guys have not been able to do what you said you were going to do at this location, I don't believe we'd be getting in fights around you guys servicing that location. You'd understand it, you'd focus on anything else. And that's where, again, it's like, don't look at this as changing vendor relationships. Look at it as moving from a vendor to a partner.
1,000%. Yeah, totally agree. And again, like we've done our most successful partnerships with our customers have been those where, like even with the Dave's Hot Chicken team, we serviced all the locations and we sat down for probably close to like 13 months trying to figure out how to make this solution work financially. The solution was working. It was just,
and like that's a good point. Like there may be opportunities when you allow yourself to be open with the team, right? That you say, "Wow, you have a relationship in this particular store that you shouldn't change." Right now, maybe what we can do is we can put the cradle in there. We can help. Like there are the complementary services in some point as well, right? But like where we had good opportunities, it's not change for change's sake, right? There was truly an evaluation of what was going to improve our business, right? Financially, operationally, right? And that's again. When you look at that, like, obviously, you guys want every store will possibly give you. That's understood, right? But the way in which you've gone about building that relationship hasn't felt like that. It's felt about as you learned more about us, you're able to do more for us. And I think I would ask a business owner to tell me if they don't think that's a relationship worth pursuing, right? I mean, like, and I don't think anyone in earnest could say no,
Yeah, and again, we look at it also financially. So I think we're in the midst of another deal that the cost saving is like $4,000 a month.
Right.
By switching over and getting everything added in. So again, it has to make sense all around. And again, to your point, when we sit and have these things, like with Dave's, we were able to reduce costs of this new infrastructure that was costing, $1,500 a month to $400 a month. Yeah. And then with another one of our customers, we were able to add a lot of automated stuff that made the proactiveness 1,000% easier, more automated, more structured. So Absolutely. Every time a customer came in and challenged us, we were able to use that challenge to improve for everybody within our portfolio.
Yeah. And I think there's much more you can ask for, right? Like, I think that's the same mentality we look at, and you want to find people like that to work with.
Michael, I truly appreciate your time. This has been amazing. I've learned so much in this, and I appreciate you taking the time.
No, thank you. I mean, we're really excited that we have this partnership with Vivant, and I'd say the last thing I'd say is like I only expect it to expand, right? So that's my expectation long term, and I think again, like when you have partners like that, it's a good position to be in if you're me.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.